Hello and welcome to Stories from Foster Care, a brand new podcast series from the Irish Foster Care Association. My name is Niamh Barrett, and over the course of this series I will be meeting people from all walks of life who have different experiences of foster care in Ireland.
When you have children that come into your care, don't go in with this idea that you're saving them. Because you're not. You're not saving a child. You're actually taking a child away from what they were used to. And if it was that mammy or daddy drank every night or took drugs or did whatever, that was their normal.
On this episode of Stories from Foster Care, I'm talking to Sandra Parker. Sandra is a foster carer from Tipperary who's been fostering for 21 years. She's one of 4 sisters, 3 of whom foster. She came in to chat about her experiences as a foster carer. We had a really engaging conversation full of very helpful information for anyone who's thinking about fostering. So Sandra, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming in to chat to us today.
Thank you very much, Niamh. I'm delighted to be here.
So maybe let's start at the beginning. How and when did you become a foster carer? How did it happen?
I suppose to figure out how I became a foster carer, you'd have to look at the way I was brought up myself. So I'm one of 4 girls and 2 boys, and 2 of my other sisters are also foster carers. We were brought up in a home. My father was in the army and my mother was a stay-at-home mum, and he was always very good and very caring to our neighbours. Would bring food into people, as he called them, the old folks. Sure, they were nearly just a bit older than himself, but he was always looking after people around in our neighbourhood. And we just had that community in Clonmel, where I'm from. Your key was left in the front door, and we were able to live like that. The children were all out on the street playing. I remember when my younger brother was born, Alan. I'm 11 years older than him, but on the day he was born at home. And we live in a cul-de-sac, and the 2 walls of all the houses going down into the cul-de-sac was full of children. And when the doctor came with his black bag, I think somebody asked him, was the baby in it? But when he came back out and he said it was a boy, there was a scatter. He said he never saw children move so quickly. All the children had to run home to tell. Imagine my poor mother up in the bedroom. When I think of it now, imagine if you're up in the bedroom giving birth to your youngest child, and the whole of the avenue was waiting to hear what she was going to have. So my father was very good to my mother when we were younger. He was a very caring man. He used to get us all up for school every morning. He'd have the kettle boiled and the water in the sink for you to wash yourself with, and he'd have your breakfast on the table, and he would take us to school. But before he did that, he'd bring her up a cup of tea and a slice of brown bread, and that happened every single day. And wow. We'd get sent up, if we'd long hair, we'd get sent up, and she'd be lying up in the bed, and the hand would come down and she'd brush your hair, and you'd be sent off to school, and that was it. So that's where it came from. And I suppose we grew up with caring about other people and in our community and how we could help people. I got married then, and I went to live in South Africa. I was there for 9 years. I came home in 1990, and my niece died on Christmas Eve when I was at home. She was severely physically and mentally handicapped. She was non-verbal, Roshan. She was the light of our all of our lives, I suppose. And there was a huge gap after she left. But I suppose from her we learned not to be afraid of children that were anyway different, or children that needed a little bit of extra care. When she was younger, she had to be tube fed, but nowadays we have these machines that we can hook children up to, but in those days you had to hold the feed up over her head for gravity, and the feed went into her that way. She was often on death's door, and then she'd pull herself back together. And I always remember when she died, it was Christmas Eve, and she had gotten ill and she'd gone back up to Dublin, and my sister had 2 other children. They'd come back down. The nurses said to them in Temple Street, come back down, you'll be okay. And when they came down, we were all at Mass, and then when we got home, we got the call to say that she had struggled and she had died. But I do feel in hindsight maybe that she couldn't die while they were with her, because she hung on to life because of her parents so many times. She was at death's door. And then, so when I came home, then it kind of just brought it home. We went back out to South Africa, and it just brought it home to me that my own parents were getting older and I was so far away. So I came back to Clonmel. I lived in Clonmel for another 2 years, and my husband went to Abu Dhabi. So I went out to Abu Dhabi for a year then, but that didn't really work out well in terms of, living in a kind of a country like Abu Dhabi. So we came back and we stayed in Clonmel, myself and my 2 children, and my husband came over and back for a while. We separated then, and when my son was about 18, I think my mother was getting ill at that stage. My father had died in 1991, a year after Roisin had died. And my mother then wasn't doing very well, and my sister, my younger sister Eileen, said that she was going to take some time off work to stay at home with Mammy and look after her. And then I saw an ad in the paper, and the ad was looking for foster carers. So I said to my sister, why don't you apply to be a foster carer? And she said, but I'm not married. And I said, well, it doesn't say that you have to be married. It says, can you provide a loving and caring home? And I said, you can. You can provide a loving and caring home. So she made the application into fostering and was approved. And 21 years and 4 months ago, our first child came into our lives through the fostering system. And she is still with my sister, and her sister is also with my sister. So they're doing, the one is 21 this year and the other is 20 this year. So that has been a very good outcome for everybody there. So that's how I got, I suppose, involved a little bit in fostering in terms of supporting her and helping her. And then I applied to become a foster care, and the first boy I ever had in foster care is still involved with me. He was 21 last month, a lovely boy. People come into foster care for different reasons. Some people just need a little bit of help. I don't think there's the stigma around. I would hope that there isn't the stigma around being in foster care that there would have been years ago. Some people need help for different reasons. So it's good that we're able to give that help for the children that we need. Over the years, I suppose, I have fostered around 30 children. Some of them have been very high levels of support in terms of medical support that the children have needed. I had a child that had spina bifida and hydrocephalus. So she was a lovely little girl, and she went on to be adopted. I've had a few children that have very high medical needs. And I suppose at one stage, my own children would have asked me if they heard there was a new placement coming. They would have almost said, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? Because it would always seem to be the ones. But I suppose it's because we had no fear around looking after children that had, special needs or extra needs above and beyond. So that was always a good part of it. The fostering community is very good in Clonmel. We do get to meet. We do peer support through Tusla ourselves, and we get to meet up. COVID hasn't been a friend to anybody, unfortunately, at the moment, and people haven't been able to get together as much maybe as we would have had in previous years. But it is beginning to open up a bit again, so we're hoping, that in the next couple of months now, between IFCA and with Tusla, that we'll get to have a few more engagements and get to see people face to face, which is great. I'm involved with training new foster carers, so I really enjoy doing that as well. I think the participants like talking to a foster carer because we tell it as it is. It's very real for us because we're 24/7 when we're fostering. It's not a 9-to-5 job for us, and that's really important.
Yeah,
really important.
Yeah, it is. It's in your home. It's all the time.
Yes, yeah. And it can be very nerve-wracking for people. They don't know what to expect, and for a child as well. A child is coming into a house. They don't know if you've got two heads, or what you're going to be like or whatever, and so everybody's on their tippy toes going around for the first while, but it's very, very rewarding work being a foster carer. And I think foster carers are just very ordinary people. that do an extraordinary job in the community for people. And I think, there's a lot of foster carers out there that work really hard and advocate, through sometimes very extreme difficulties, dealing with with all the other agencies that we have to deal with, and they are their voice for the children that they foster, and they do a great job of it.
And I love the way you put it, that it's something you do in the community.
Yes.
So it's happening in the four walls of your home in a way, but it's actually
in the wider.
It really is impacting the whole community when you look at it that way. So you mentioned the rewards. What would you say some of the rewards have been over your couple of decades now of fostering?
I would often think, when I started fostering myself, I was probably just getting out of having my own children. As I said, my son was 18, and some of my friends around me said, why are you doing this? This is crazy. This is the time you should be off doing whatever by yourself and doing whatever. But I just feel that it gave me a purpose in my life to get up every single day. If I didn't have that purpose, my life would be so empty if I hadn't had all those children that have come through my life. And that children, there's been ups and downs, there's been very difficult placements, there's been lovely rewarding placements. I've had 2 children that went for adoption. The pre-adoption system we have here in Ireland is that they stay in foster care for a year before they go on to be fully adopted, so it gives everybody a chance to make up their minds and see what way they're going. And that is lovely that it's great to see children go back to parents that just needed a little bit of help. And I think as a foster carer, I would never overly dwell on placements that didn't work out, because you go into it, you do the very, very best you can, and there has to be some kind of, an onus on the people themselves to have the responsibility to take on board the help, and you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. And unfortunately, somewhere along the line, maybe I have often had children that will come back to me afterwards, say years afterwards, and say, I really appreciated what you were doing for me, and I know I didn't tell you enough at the time, but I'm telling you now. I got a beautiful card at Christmas from a young girl that had gone out of my placement about, I'd say, 8 years previous, but she's gone nursing now, and she just said, just to tell you that, all the times that you talked up for me and all the times that you helped me, I didn't thank you enough, and I'm thanking you now. You really did a great job. And that was so nice to hear that, that you hear that back after years and years. I suppose in the media, especially if you look in movies and whatever, foster carers are portrayed very often as people that are there. They're in it for money. They're in it, I suppose some of the American stuff that we see, and people see that and they think, oh, are you only doing that? And it's never a motivation by money for foster carers. It's a motivation to help people where they need it, and that's very, very important for me.
Yeah, sure. One film I can think of, you can probably think of more, is Annie. I don't know if that was if she was a foster carer in Annie, but she was terrible. And she was only in it for the money. Yeah, it's interesting how that comes through.
Yeah, I was watching Hawaii Five-0 the other night, myself and my little girl that I have at home with me, and the boy had run away and he wouldn't go to school and I don't know, whatever, and then this other man was trying to help him, and he was saying, no, I'm never going into foster care. That man was, he was terrible, he was a drinker and he was whatever. And myself and the little one were just looking at each other, and I said, now aren't you lucky I'm not that kind of a foster care? But you just have to laugh it off, because really it's just, it's a terrible portrayal of a group of people that, now there are people that are out there that have not been good foster carers and that have done a disservice to the children that they have looked after. And that really is up to Tusla, it's up to our courts to kind of really, put in the monitors. And the struggles at the moment, I suppose, in fostering is the huge lack of social workers. And, we have children who have no appointed social workers. We have children that are left in houses where they shouldn't be left in houses because we don't have enough social workers to go out and to check and see, monitor and see what's going on for people. And it just has a detrimental effect on a child's well-being overall. What's the outcome we want for a child to come into foster care? We want them to have, a good backbone and have a good life for when they go out, that they'll be good functioning adults when they go out into the world, and that's what we want. We don't want people that are judged because they're in foster care, or that they feel embarrassed that they're not able to talk, to other people about it. I think the schools have gotten a lot better than they used to be before. There's great improvements in the school. I think mandatory reporting has been a very positive thing for children in Ireland that, are experiencing difficulties. That's all very important as well.
This is Aisha McFerrin, and you're listening to the Stories from Foster Care podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
In terms of the challenges that you've experienced over the years, you mentioned the lack of social workers. Is that area of the foster care, is that the biggest challenge there, do you think, or are there other things?
Well, I think for the child, you see, Tusla is a complicated setup in terms of, as I often say, it's like the A team and the B team. So the A team is the fostering link support worker, who would be my support worker, and they're always very good. They don't seem to have the turnover of staff, and you can be very lucky. It's been unusual that I haven't had an appointed link support worker. If I didn't have a link support worker, then the team leader has been supporting us, which is, we really do. I do really appreciate that. But it's a statutory requirement that every child in care has a social worker. And what we're now seeing is that social care leaders are having to step up into the role of a social work. And it's just not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So, it's when you're trying to advocate, in particular, say if you have a child that needs psychology or needs an educational assessment or needs whatever, you really are struggling if you don't have an appointed social worker, if you don't have somebody that's, you end up shouting all the time. Sometimes I feel I'm like a broken record, but you have to keep up. You're advocating on behalf of a person, so you just have to keep up the pressure and keep, asking. I mean, the social care workers, don't get me wrong, I've dealt with lovely people inside, and I've been very lucky with the people that I've dealt with over my 21 years fostering. But there's a statutory requirement there for a reason. I don't know, I know they're trying to do, to encourage people to stay, the social workers. But very often I think what happens if you're in college and you come from Cork and you get a placement in Clonmel, well, the first thing you do day one is you put in for a transfer, to wherever it is you want to be, and there's a big change around. So what foster carers offer children is consistency of care. But unfortunately, if you don't have consistency from the Tusla side, then that, there are cracks that are coming up.
Sure.
Yeah. Like a foster or social worker comes in and they're probably allocated, if their cases they're going to court, they're cases that they're going to take up huge amounts of their time and whatever. And like we all know, I've often been waiting for a call from somebody that's standing outside a court, a social worker, because you're waiting to find out what the outcome was, and to be told, oh, he didn't hear our case today, because it ran over with something else. There's huge amounts of time, spent waiting in courtrooms for social workers. There's huge pressures. I'm sure the pressures must be terrible on social workers going into court with the system the way it is at the moment.
Sandra, you mentioned that you started fostering when your son was 18, so your children were a bit older, but still in all, they would have been around a bit, and they would have had, had relationships with the kids as well.
Yeah.
What did you see their perspective being, or have they shared their experiences with you?
I suppose, well, I have a son and a daughter. I have 4 grandchildren. My daughter has 3 children, and my son has 1 little boy. And I suppose they're always concerned about me. I suppose that's their biggest concern, is me. And especially if I had a placement that wasn't maybe going very well, that they would be concerned about, how that was impacting on me. And, sometimes, see, when you're dealing with Tusla, it can be difficult at times because the wheels move slowly. But when you're out there, like my daughter maybe mightn't necessarily understand, they almost want somebody to swoop in and solve the problems, and that's not really the way that things will work out for people. That sometimes things take time. You can't, if things aren't working well, you can't just move a child, just like that. That's not the way it happens. So I suppose more so around me, that they would be more concerned about me than anything else. The boy that I had fostered when he was 2.5, he stood with my son when he got married.
Oh.
So there's huge ties with the children. It's really as good. It's lovely to see that you can remain friends outside of the system and where the system. He still comes up to me now, even though he's 21. He'll come up and visit and stay for a night or two, and that's really nice as well to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But it's unusual. I think a lot of foster carers probably are still. There's a lot of foster carers that have, before the aftercare system, a lot of foster carers push the children through university themselves off their own bat, which it's outstanding, that people have done that. Before the aftercare system, we have an aftercare system now in place, but before the aftercare system, a lot of we've gone to the IFCA conferences, and we've heard, other foster carers speak that, it costs them, whatever, 20,000, whatever, to put a child through university, So we have an aftercare system now, and Tusla will support children once they remain in long-term education. Which is fantastic, but the problem we're experiencing now is that we have some children that don't want to go on to full-time education, who are experiencing mental health issues due to COVID and due to the changes that have happened, and there's nowhere for them to go, so they're ending up staying with the foster carers, but Tusla aren't able to support them in the long term because they're not continuing in education. So that can be very difficult. For a child that feels maybe that there was a rejection by their birth parents, that now, they're feeling, is the foster care going to throw me out now? Am I going to be out on the street? They're children, very, very vulnerable children. And even though we have children that are at an age of 20 or 21, they're not working on that age level. They're probably working, at least 4 years back from that. They've had a great support with foster carers, with being sheltered maybe from the outside world, and now suddenly, I remember listening to what's his name?
Oh, Robbie
Gilligan.
Yeah,
I remember him talking at one of the IFCA conferences, and they were advocating at that stage for an aftercare system. And I remember him saying that, when your own child is 18, you don't open up your front door and say, right, there you go, out you go, you support your children and you keep them with them as long as you can. And I mean, statistics have shown us that some of our children aren't really leaving the nest, or they're leaving the nest for a while and they're coming back again, So when you're a parent, you don't shut the door on your children when you're a parent. And why should you do that when you're a foster care? But, the financial strain that's on foster carers then to be supporting children, and it is quite difficult for these children as well. And accommodation is, we were discussing this, at home, there isn't accommodation. We have a COVID family page on Facebook at home now, and every other week some poor person is up looking for accommodation or a house to rent or whatever, because every place and accommodation's gone so expensive. I mean, I'd hate to be trying to get accommodation up in Dublin. It must be horrendous to try and, afford accommodation and be out, to feel you're out there on your own, and not have the support of people behind you.
Yeah. So it's like, even if you were ready to be independent, you've nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a massive problem. It impacts on in so many ways on society. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandra, what would you say to someone who is thinking about fostering?
What I would say to them is you really need to learn how to look after yourself when you're a foster care. You need to be able to not take things personal, because when a child is kicking off, they're not kicking off. It's not about you personally. You need to be able to, at the end of the day, draw a line. If things don't go well, you draw a line and you start all over again the next day. While we were doing the training now, it's just one of the things that I always do. If I say something wrong, if I misspeak, or if I said something that I shouldn't have said to a child, I'll always go back and apologise. I'll always go back and say, oh, you know what, I think I kind of flew off the handle a bit there now, and that wasn't really, like I say, if something got broken or something happened, or, they were supposed to do something and they didn't do it, and I'd often go back and say, oh, I flew off the handle a bit there now, and I want to say I'm sorry that, I kind of overreacted a bit. And when we're trying to teach children, the best way to teach children is by showing and leading by example ourselves. So it's very important. When we sit down for dinner in our house, we don't ever have a TV on. Often it comes up with children, they don't like particular things to eat. What I do is I lay everything out on the worktop, and people come up and help themselves, so that you take what you want, or whatever, what you don't want, then you leave behind. If you don't want mushy peas, or you don't want cabbage, or you don't want whatever, all the stuff is there, and just people, you give them choices. And I think when you have children that come into your care, don't go in with this idea that you're saving them, because you're not. You're not saving a child. You're actually taking a child away from what they were used to. And if it was that mammy or daddy drank every night, or took drugs, or did whatever, that was their normal, and they're coming into a house where you shouldn't think they should be grateful because they're coming to you. It's about working with them. It's about getting their story for them, and that work has to be done with their social worker. What story? Why am I in foster care? That's very important that, that's explained to children. Very often when I've seen it with experience of children coming into care, and somehow or another 3 weeks gets mentioned. But what it is it takes 3 weeks to get all the reports ready to go to court. But the child hears, I'm with this foster care for 3 weeks. So then the next thing, a social worker is coming back to say, well, now we were at court today and the judge has now given us 3 months. And this child now is devastated because this child thought I was going home in, what are you on about? So that can be very unsettling for children. So that we can be as honest as we can with children in a child-friendly manner, and that you don't ever tell a child something that you don't know is 100% correct yourself. I would often say, oh, I don't know the answer to that now, but you know what, I'm going to check that out and I'll come back to you, and if I can't tell you, then we'll get, whatever the social worker's name is, Mary or Anne or whatever, we'll get her to come and have a chat with you, and then you can figure that out. To remember that children's lives are private. And if you want to be a good foster care, don't speak ill about where the children come from, about their parents, about anything like that. I think being a relative foster care must be extremely difficult, because there's another whole, part of that where it's your brother or it's your sister's children, and that can be very difficult. Being a general foster care, which I am, is almost easier, because there's kind of more of a cut-off, emotional wise, there's a cut-off. But when you're a relative foster care, I think it's have to acknowledge that it's very, very difficult for them. And I suppose really just don't give up. I think it's not an easy ride. It's, there's a lot of hard work. I would definitely say do any training that you can do. I'm actually a lover of Christine Enright. I think she's absolutely brilliant. I don't know how many courses with Christine through IFCA. She's just such a wonderful, wonderful trainer, really. So has great empathy for everybody, So that's I really, really have appreciated that. And that's it, really. Just look after yourself. Make sure your own self-care, that you are going to look after yourself. Find things that make you happy. Not just that by the time you get to bed at night time, your head is fried and you're so exhausted, So.
How do you take care of yourself, Sandra?
Well, I have a book club, which is AKA Wine Club. We love that. And actually, the last book we read, I had picked it. It was by Kit DeWall, and it was My Name is Leon is the name of it. And I would recommend that anybody who's thinking of being a foster carer or is a foster carer should read it. The story itself is told from the boy's perspective, and his mother had mental health issues, but the worry that he explained, it was just so, enlightening the way she had him explain that he was looking after his mother, and then they took him, and then he was always worried about, and he had a little brother, but the brother, because it's set in the UK, the brother was adopted, because that's what they do in the UK. They don't keep them in foster care. Their system is different than ours. If they're going to be in long-term care, they'll be put up for adoption. But because the Leon was older, he wasn't going to get adopted. But it was a lovely story, and Kit herself comes from, her mother was a foster carer. She dealt with the legal system in the UK, so she's very knowledgeable on and I really, really enjoyed that. Last year, myself and my sister Susan walked a marathon a week for Laura Lynn. So we really enjoyed that, and we got great support around town because people saw us. You'd often you get a text, I saw you up by wherever, or I saw you here, or I saw you there. So that was great as well. And then other than that, it's family, more family orientated, I suppose. I love having meals with my family. St. Patrick's Day now, the younger kids went down to the parade and they marched with Clonmel, and I cooked a leg of lamb at home, and we had a big fancy dinner at home. And that's what I love to do, that kind of thing. I suppose it's curtailed, maybe going out for meals. We do like our old takeaways every now and again. That's good as well. I do like to read. That's probably my biggest thing.
Anything you'd like to add, Sandra, that you haven't touched on that you'd like to tell people who are listening?
I've said so much already. No, I just suppose is to just give yourself a chance. If really there's children that are desperate need of foster carers out there. And really, just to seriously give serious consideration to it. Can you provide a loving home? That's it. Look after yourself. It's very important. But I really would encourage people to seriously consider taking it all on board.
Thank you, Sandra. Great talking to you. Thanks for coming in.
That's lovely. Thanks very much, Niamh.
It was wonderful to hear Sandra's stories and insights from her fostering journey. Sandra is part of the Tusla training team for prospective foster carers in the Tipperary, Carlow, Kilkenny area. The book she mentioned is My Name is Leon by Kit DeWall. That's spelled KITDEWAAL. Thanks for listening, and join us next time on Stories from Foster Care.